Hi, this is Erica with Beyond 20. So in one of our other videos, we talked about what is Agile. This video, we're going to dig into what is core Scrum. A lot of folks say, well, this is Scrum, this isn't Scrum. So we're going to dig into what actually is part of Core Scrum, or Score Scrum, same difference. So within core Scrum, there are just three roles: the roles of product owner, Scrum Master, and the development team. We'll have separate videos that talk about each of these three, but just want to introduce the roles of core Scrum. Also within core Scrum, you've got 4 events. You've got sprint planning, you've got your daily Scrum, you've got your sprint review, and your sprint retrospective. So we'll dig into each of these 4 just real briefly here as part of this video. So the first one is sprint planning, and that's my product owner hanging out with my development team. This is where they figure out for the next chunk of work, let's say 1 week up to 4 weeks, what are we going to accomplish? And the development team then digs in and says, okay, how are we going to accomplish the work in that next sprint? In the daily Scrum, this happens every day. It could happen in the morning, doesn't necessarily have to, but this is a quick meeting, no more than about 15 minutes with the development team to talk with one another, sync up, and answer these 3 questions. What did I do yesterday to help the development team as a whole? What am I going to do today to help the development team as a whole? And where am I blocked? What are those impediments, those things that are standing in my way where maybe I need some help with? So it's really just to talk as a group about those 3 questions and make sure that you're making forward progress as a team. At the end of a sprint, this is where you get a chance to show your customers what you've done. And this is in a sprint review. It's also sometimes called a demo. Your product owner is going to be part of it. Your development team is actually going to show the work that they've built, get feedback from customers, and then that's going to inform the next sprint or the next chunk of work that gets accomplished. And then the very last thing that happens in a sprint is the Scrum team gets together. So if you remember the 3 roles, the Scrum Master, the product owner, and the development team, they get together by themselves as a team and say, what went really well? What do we need to make sure that we continue into the next sprint? And then what can we improve? Maybe where are some of the deltas? What are some of the gaps? And let's maybe pick one of those things or a couple of those things to work on in the next sprint so that with each sprint, we're getting better and better as a team. Also within core Scrum, we've got 3 what's called artifacts, or 3 products. We've got our product backlog, we've got our sprint backlog, and then we have something called a product increment. So our product backlog, I heard this analogy and I thought it was fantastic, that if you think about your product backlog as a Pez dispenser, the candy at the top, that's the stuff that's highest priority. That's the stuff that we want to make sure that we're working on in our next sprint. And our product owner, which we'll talk about in another video, is actually managing and maintaining that product backlog to make sure that the most important stuff gets worked on first. So there's also a thing called a sprint backlog. This is what your development team and your product owner are going to decide can be accomplished in the next sprint, and they're going to work from just that backlog for the sprint. So it's kind of a subset of that larger product backlog of everything that we're going to do as a team, or everything that is requested of us to do as a team. Not all of it we may get to. And then the last artifact is that of your product increment. This is actually what you're producing. You want to produce by the end of your sprints something that is potentially shippable. You may not actually ship it, but it needs to be done. It needs to be potentially shippable. So that's it. That is core Scrum. We talked about the 3 roles, the 4 events, the 3 artifacts. To learn more, go to beyond20.com. Thanks.